switch it up. Because you deserve more than I do. All I do is I use my gifts this way, and you use your gifts in other ways, and together we make a church. And the gates of hell will not prevail against this church, and I'm so grateful for that. All of you, 82% of our church is involved in some sort of ministry every single week of the year. And that's an incredible statistic. Usually, by the way, it's the other way around. 20%, it's a 20-80 principle. 20% of the people do the work, 80% of the people don't. For us, it's completely opposite. 80% serve in some capacity, and I'm grateful for all of you. Together, we make this happen, and we have for the last 5 years. So I have something special for you this morning that I'd like to share with you this morning, if you bear with me just for a little while longer. And I've got something really cool that I have in my back pocket that I want to do with you still yet today. 5 years ago, we started a ministry at Village Church of Bartlett. You saw the video already this morning, but we started that ministry on a Saturday night, and when Fountain View became available, we moved to a Sunday morning. That was in January, actually the end of January 2017, and then we did soft launch because we were taking everything out of a trailer. Do you remember those days? Well, that was a blast, let me tell you. We had to take everything out of a trailer and roll it through the place and set it all up. We weren't online. We didn't have all of these things. We were bare bones. And so over the last 5 years, God has really grown us and grown us together as a church family, grown us numerically and also deep in our roots. Our grand opening was the last Sunday of February. It was 2/26/2017. We had 128 in attendance. Friends and family came by. We ended that year with 47 average in attendance per month. Our highest average per month that year, I think, was December, and we had 65. Financially, we finished in the red, and we did the next year, and we did the next year. And Village Church of Bartlett had come along to help us through those first few years. We're grateful for that. We had 88% of our folks participating in ministry because, man, we needed help. And so we had a lot of folks helping us out. Today, after COVID, we have survived COVID, which I think is pretty amazing. I think we're going to have COVID around for a while now, but maybe the worst is behind us. Like I said, 82% are involved in some sort of a weekly ministry. We've seen many people surrender to Jesus Christ. We've done baptisms in a public pool with people doing laps behind us. We've done baptisms in this room in a kiddie pool where we dunked the living daylights out of people, and that was a lot of fun. I never thought I'd do baptisms in a kiddie. We've done baptisms in my backyard. I mean, we have been flexible in the baptism range. I'm pleased to say that the Lord has given us money in the bank, so now we can be looking for a building, which we're excited about hopefully happening in 2022. The last Sunday of February, which was our first Sunday together in 2017, I spoke a message on faith. The title of that message was, "Does Your Faith Look to a Better Future?" And I think I got the title up there. So this was our third message, part 3, in the faith series. And how many people were here on that day? By the way, just so I can see, how many people were here? Just raise your hand on that day. All right. How many people remember my message? All right, good. Because I'm going to do it again. So just so you know, I'm doing the same message that I did way back then. Why? Because it's amazing. I was reading through it, and it's amazing how pertinent it is to where we are even today. So let me give you one of the illustrations, one of my favorite illustrations from my life experience. We were in Greece, my brother and I, and we had just graduated, and now we were going to do some bicycling. We went to all over Europe and Israel and Egypt. We were crazy people. But anyway, we're bicycling, and on this particular day, we were bicycling from Athens, Greece, and we were bicycling across to the land of the Spartans. This is called the Peloponnese, and as we were going through, we settled down for the night in a little town, and we got ready for our next day of tackling this new area in Greece, this place called the Peloponnese. The day was beautiful. It was a hot day, and we had picked up some bread, made some sandwiches, and we sat down and had lunch in a vineyard. It was an amazing. I can still picture, some of those things in your mind. You can still picture it. We're sitting in this vineyard. Somebody owned it, I don't know. But we're bicycling, and we just stopped, and we just eating these submarine sandwiches in this vineyard in this most beautiful place in the world. And then we began to get on our bikes and bicycle further into the Peloponnese, and then we saw what we were in for. Now, in the distance, mountains are beautiful things. But when you bicycle up to the foot of them, they're not so nice. This particular scene, this is actually what we saw when we got to the top of it. But let me explain to you, you can take that down. Let me explain to you what the mountains are like that me as a 17-year-old didn't quite do my homework to understand. We didn't realize that these things were like 2,000 feet tall. And so we began to climb these mountains. By the time we hit our first turn, we were absolutely miserable. How many of you know what a snake path is? Do you know what a snake path is? Snake path is how you get up a mountain so that you don't go straight up the mountain, so you don't tip backwards in your car, so you just go back miles of going back and forth just to go a little way up the mountain, right? And we just start going back and forth and back and forth. It is getting hotter. We are getting more and more miserable. Quarter of the way through the day, we began to walk because we just couldn't bike up these slopes. We lost our enthusiasm. Forget the Spartans, right? I used to want to be a Spartan. I can't even make it up the snake path. Half of the way through the day, we run out of water. All the water is gone. All of our food is gone. We have eaten and drank everything that we have. And about a third of the way through the day, I think I pretty much lost my salvation at that point. I wasn't happy with anybody. I was not friends with my brother anymore. We had stopped talking about half of the way through the day. And we were trying to bicycle, but the slopes were so high. At one point, my brother, his foot came out of his stirrup, and he sliced his calf open on his spokes. It was a miserable. His DNA is all over those foothills. But by the time we got to the top of the mountain, we thought, okay, we got to go down the other side, and that's where this picture comes in, because when we got to the top of the mountain, we look at, and that's what we see. There's more to come. Again, we didn't do our homework, but we were not excited anymore. We were simply discouraged. We were exhausted from the climb. We were exhausted from the journey, and we began to think this whole idea was a really bad idea. It was hard even to remember the lunch we had in the vineyard. All of that had gone behind us, and we were just discouraged. Sometimes, listen, when life hits us, we lose our perspectives. And sometimes we lose our hope. And sometimes we even lose our way. I totally understand that, and I correlate those feelings to that day in the Peloponnese in Greece, in the land of the Spartans. The longer the journey, life has a way of stealing your joy sometimes. We forget the beauty of the mountains. They don't look beautiful anymore. We forget the sandwiches in the vineyards, and now we're just really tired individuals, and we realize life is difficult. And I have to tell you, we've gone 5 years in this church since we've started our journey together, and I have to tell you, I had no idea what was up this mountain or what was on the other side. 5 years ago, there was no war in Europe. 5 years ago, no one ever heard of COVID. 5 years ago, a gallon of gas was $2.05 a gallon. 5 years ago, we had people with us that we don't have with us anymore. The danger in taking the journey in faith is that you anticipate great things. You think, it's going to be amazing, magnificent. Wait till we get to the top. But you bike up the foothill of that first mountain and you begin the climb, and it looms much larger than we ever could have thought. And sometimes, listen, folks, I totally get this. Sometimes we just lose heart. Sometimes we abandon the journey altogether. That can happen in our faith as well. In fact, in 1 Timothy 1:19, Paul says to Timothy, this young pastor, hold faith and a good conscience. By rejecting this, some have made shipwreck regarding their faith. You know what that means? The journey is too hard for some people. And instead of relying on their faith and falling back into it, they abandon it. They give it up. And if anything, the changes over the past few years, these changes over the past 5 years, has taught us that life can be much more challenging than we ever thought. So I want to take you back to the passage that we talked about 5 years ago on this day, back in 2017. And here's what we talked about. The passage is from Hebrews 10. And the first thing I want you to do is to look back. Look back and remember. Hebrews 10, verse 32. But recall, the writer of Hebrews says, recall the former days, when after you were enlightened, you endured a hard struggle with sufferings. Do you know what recall means? Recall means like look back, remember. Take a moment, sit down, and recall where you have been. I love the fact that the writer says that these people were enlightened. It's like Jesus cleaned the schmutz off of the camera so that they could see God. This is why Jesus came, because we thought we knew who God was, but apparently we had no idea. So God sends us his Son. Jesus Christ is the lens cleaner so that we can see a clear picture of who God is. Why Jesus constantly said, haven't you read? Because apparently we've read it, but we didn't get it. Or you've heard it said, but I say unto you. In other words, you're interpreting this all wrong. God in his graciousness gives us Jesus Christ so that we can have a visible picture of God. Jesus Christ, who is fully God, cleans off the lenses of our misunderstandings and allows us to see. And that's what's happening in Hebrews. These Hebrews were turning from Judaism to Christianity. And they were taking a little bit of their Jewishness and adding it to the Christianness that they were getting into. And they were schmutzing up the camera. Paul the Apostle is a great example of this. Because before Paul was Saul, and he was an amazing teacher of the law. In fact, he was taught by one of the most amazing teachers of the Bible that walked the planet at the time. Paul was groomed to be a teacher of the law. And apparently he interpreted everything he learned wrong because he was persecuting the church of Jesus Christ with the idea that he was doing it for God. And then he meets Jesus Christ. You know the story. He meets Jesus, and Jesus says, why are you persecuting me? And Paul is blind. And then, you know the story. Barnabas comes along and ministers to him, leads him to the Lord. And all of a sudden, Paul becomes this amazing apostle of Jesus Christ. Why? Because he saw God in Jesus Christ. He understood. In the lives of these people in Hebrews, after they were enlightened, after they realized, okay, faith is a wonderful thing, but holy smokes, wait till you get to the mountain. Because then that's when you need your faith the most. Sunday school answers are great, but life is a lot harder than Sunday school a lot of times. And when you get up to those mountains, you lean back into your faith. You don't abandon it. These folks, after they gave up their Jewishness, they were still Jews, they were still Hebrews, but after they gave up their idea of Old Testament law will get them to heaven and started following Jesus Christ, a lot of them were abandoned by their families. They were kicked out of society. They were not welcome anymore because they were Christians, followers of Jesus. Sound familiar? The writer goes on to say, sometimes you were publicly exposed to reproach and affliction, sometimes being partners with those who were treated like that. For you had compassion on those in prison, and you joyfully accepted the plundering of your property. They began losing everything because they decided that they were going to be devoted to Jesus Christ. It cost them everything. Church, I have to tell you, we live in a day and an age when the church is being persecuted. You don't hear about it, but for God's sakes, the church needs to know when persecution is happening. Listen to this. Today, people suffer from public reproach like few times in church history. For some Muslims, they're cast out of their families if they're found with a Bible. For North Koreans, if you're found with even a scrap of the Bible on anything, you will be taken from society and never heard from again, put into concentration camps and tortured. In Afghanistan now, 5 years later, in Afghanistan, Christians are being hunted from door to door. This is what the Taliban is doing now. There are organizations trying to get Christians out of there because they are being persecuted like nobody. In fact, if you want to know the truth, North Korea used to be at the top of the you don't want to be a Christian here list. Now Afghanistan is equal to that. And not only that, but we've made now the Taliban the 13th most well-equipped army in the world, and they're using our equipment to persecute Christians. Since doing this message 5 years ago, Afghanistan has joined this most dangerous place to call yourself a follower of Jesus Christ, and now the Ukraine. You may not know this, you may see everything that's happening in the news, but Ukraine was a bastion of Christianity. Hopefully, it still will be. The largest missionary sending country in Eastern Europe is the Ukraine. Of those who call themselves religious, 80% of them are followers of Jesus Christ. I sometimes think we get the visual of what's happening and we miss the spiritual side of what Satan is doing in the background. Every month, I gave you these statistics in 2017. Let me remind you of them again. Every month in 2017, this is 5 years ago, 322 Christians were killed for their faith. Every month, 214 Christian properties and churches were being destroyed, and 722 forms of violent acts were performed against Christians every single month. Fast forward to 2021, just in case you're wondering how things have gotten better, they haven't. In 2021, 400 Christians are killed for their faith, almost 4,800 per year. That's over 100 more per month than it was in 2017. My question to you is, why don't these brothers and sisters lose heart? That's tough, right? That's a tough life. Why don't they lose heart? Why don't they abandon their faith? And I have to tell you, it's because of exactly what Hebrews 10 says. They recall who they were and who God is making them into now. They realize why they started with Jesus in the first place. They remembered how the love of Christ compelled them to follow him in faith. They realized Jesus plus everything else equals nothing, but Jesus plus nothing else equals everything. This is when faith kicks into gear. And it wouldn't be surprised if in Afghanistan and Ukraine and any other country that is going to quickly rise to the top of the "you don't want to be a Christian here" list, we see the church of God explode. Because people run to Christ when they need hope. So the writer says, remember why you started this journey and don't lose heart. Romans 8:18, Paul says, for I consider the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. In a world where there's not too many sure things, don't throw away the one thing that is a sure thing, and that is your faith in Jesus Christ. Remember the love of Christ and how you began that journey, how it compelled you. And remember the former times. Remember that and the enlightenment that Jesus brought to your life. And then he moves forward. He says, now look forward. Remember God's promise. Going down to verse 34. Since you knew that you yourselves had a better possession, an abiding one. What is our better possession, church? What is our abiding possession? For this, we go to the story of Abraham, and he does in Hebrews as well. We don't have time to look into it, but he goes to the story of Abraham. Abraham, when he was called by God, God said, Abraham, I want you to go to a place that I'm going to show you. In other words, I'm not telling you if I'm taking you south, west, east, north. I'm not telling you any of that. I just need you to put your shoes on and start walking. And as Abraham walked, God reveals to him what the plot of land that he would give to him would be. Abraham had to move before God revealed to him where he was going. Do you feel like that happens in your life sometimes? A sitting stone is hard to get rolling, but one that is moving, I think, is easy for God to maneuver. Abraham looked forward and not behind him for what God had in plan for him, in store for him. And not only that, but I think Abraham knew he was moving even to a greater destination than what his feet walked on. Literally, when he got to the promised land, God said, okay, you're here. I want you to know everywhere you walk is yours. How would you like somebody to say that? Okay, you're here. Everywhere you put your feet, that land is yours. I'd be walking all over the place. I'll take this, and I'll take this, and I'll take this. But Abraham knew God had something even greater prepared for him. In verse 9 of chapter 11, the next chapter, talks about Abraham some more. It says, by faith he went to live in the land of promise, as in a foreign land, living in tents with Isaac and Jacob, heirs with him of the same promise. For he was looking, where, church? He was looking forward. He was looking forward to the city that had its foundations, whose designer and builder is God. Those who follow Jesus Christ are promised a life here that is an abiding life, abiding in Jesus Christ. But more than that, we look forward to what is to come. A life that is too great to be even describable. It's true that suffering and discouragement will try and pull you back, try and get you to abandon your faith. But faith is what keeps us looking forward. 5 years ago, we looked forward to where God would take us. Oh, if you were, Craig, what's your 5-year plan? 5 years ago, COVID would not have been a part of it. Online craziness would not have been a part of it. There's so many things I would not have chosen. I would choose for people to be here that weren't here 5 years ago. My 5-year goals were not God's. No idea what we're in for 5 years ago. No idea what friends we would make along the way. No idea 5 years would include a worldwide pandemic. But we were simply compelled to create something that was not here before us. And so here's some things that we have done over the last 5 years. And this, listen, this is my attempt to cover 5 years. And it's pretty poor, so feel free to send me texts afterwards, all right? We had a presence in this community at Fountain View for the last 5 years. We open these doors when we sing, and we fill this building with praises to God every single morning, every single Sunday morning. Sometimes we even go into the gym out there. You remember this? We've gone into the gym with several other churches, and people jog around while we sing praises to God. We've baptized so many people in that public pool out there. People are doing laps behind us. It's wonderful to see how God has allowed us to take this public place and turn it into a place of worship and a place that would bring him praise. We've done VBS programs together. Yeah, there's one of our dunking moments. We've done VBS programs together with several different churches. We've had awards even here in our own church. We've held several outdoor meetings, a lot of outdoor meetings. We've done concerts right out here on this lawn out here with a special guest that we had come in, and we shared the gospel. The mayor was there. We prayed over the mayor and some of his servants. We did that with three other churches. We've done, how many parades have we done, church? Oh my goodness, how many parades? How many water bottles have we handed out? I shudder to think. We have done, you got egged because of the making lemonade out of lemons, and we have reached into our neighborhoods. We gave out, over the last 2 years, 35,000 eggs to families in our communities. Not only that, but we have begun a ministry to Bridgeway community. Bridgeway, if you're watching this morning, wish you were here, and we have been able to do a monthly ministry at Bridgeway. And you may not know this, but during COVID, I did a weekly phone call with those folks at Bridgeway. They were in their rooms for a year, not allowed out. And so it was my privilege to do that, and they join us, and we continue doing a ministry out there. We did a ministry with our police and our fire departments. This is our community, night out that we did. Josh, you're looking strapping there. We had a great time. We've done that several years when we were able to do it. We've donated to multiple community support organizations, including police and shelters. We've donated, what is that, Arcan? What's the drug thing you take for fentanyl? Narcan. We were able to help the police out with some of their needs for Narcan. We've helped multiple families in need, including one family who lost their house in a tragic fire. We've done multiple youth outreaches and adventures with the kids. They've done, this is one trip that they had to South Dakota to minister to some Native Americans there, and a life-changing experience. But they've also done the shoebox. What's the shoeboxes? What? Yes, but what is the one that you did? Samaritan's Purse. No, not that one. What's the one that you did with the kids? Yeah. Feed My Starving Children, yeah. So they've done several outreaches, obviously that I can't remember. We've participated with 8 different churches in our local area. We have done ministry with 8 different churches. Why? Because we are not a church that's going to heaven. We'll get our own private corner. We are in this together. So we love partnering with churches and doing stuff with other churches. We've done special services with 5 different churches. We've sent $1,500 to College Church in Venezuela to help them keep a food pantry open. We've planted a new online church that is available every single Sunday. We have a healthy youth group that's about to begin a brand new part of their ministry starting next week. They're meeting on Sundays at 1:30 at Fellowship, and they went over there and renovated that area, and we're excited that they get now a big gym and a youth area that they can call their own. We've helped multiple families with groceries, car bills, repairs, other different kinds of bills. We've established an entire line item with the village of Carroll Stream beginning 2 years ago when we took up a special offering, and we were able to do more with it than I ever imagined, and we're looking forward to seeing what they do with that line item. Now we have a budget line item that basically we created because of our donations to help out Carroll Stream. Leadership-wise, we have 3 elders in the church. We've added those elders since we began, and we have 2 deacons, and we're grateful for them. We have 8 MDs. We have 4 in our central leadership team. Some of them you've seen already. Multiple people have had opportunities to discover their gifts by serving through this church. And so I'm just curious, like how many of you, we're not going to turn up the lights, but how many of you actually are involved in some sort of a team or weekly ministry because of Village Church East? How many of you have a slot on a team or a weekly ministry? Would you just raise your hand up real high? Raise it up real high? Yeah. Awesome. Church, none of this would have happened if Village Church East had not existed. That thought humbles the living whatever out of me. Because Village Church East has been actively engaged in our faith for Christ to meet the benefits of others, God has used us in pretty incredible ways, and I'm humbled, I'm excited, and I'm confident that better and in more incredible days lay ahead of us at Village Church East. And so I'm looking forward to the next 5 years, and 15 years, and 50 years. So I finish with this one, as the writer of Hebrews does. He reminds those Christians who are going through tough times in their faith. Look back where you started. Remember why you started this journey. Look forward to what's to come. But don't forget, look up. Live a courageous faith. In Hebrews 10:35, next verse, he says, therefore, do not throw away your what, church? Don't throw away your confidence, which has a great reward. True Christians cannot abandon the very person who gave their lives purpose in the first place. Can be done. They cannot ditch Christ permanently when life gets tough. In 1 John 2:19, the writer there says some people went out from us, but they were not of us. If they had been of us, they would have continued with us, but they went out that it might become they were not a part of us to begin with. If you've got people that are on the bandwagon that leave and don't come back, most likely they were never on the bandwagon to begin with. There have been several men in my own life that I've leaned on for spiritual encouragement who have been mentors in my life and who have abandoned the faith, and I'm just going, how could that even happen? For one reason or another, they bike up real close to that mountain. They bike right up to the foothills, and they get up the first couple of snake path turns, and then they go, that's it for me. I'm not on. I'm done. And all that tells me is they probably were never in it to begin with. But true Christians may not be able to ditch Christ permanently, but they sure can lose heart. They sure can suffer discouragement. They can throw away their confidence in what Jesus can do. And they can surrender their challenges and their struggles. By the way, this idea of throwing away is in direct contrast to what God tells us with regarding our faith. He says, don't throw away your faith and lose confidence. Instead, what he says to us is in Hebrews 10:23, just a couple of verses earlier. Let us, what's the next the yellow words there? Let us what? Let us hold fast to the confession of our hope without wavering. And it doesn't say because you can do it. It doesn't say because you're strong enough, you're smart enough, and doggone it, people like it. It doesn't say that at all. It says, let us hold fast to the confession of our faith and don't waver, for he who promises is faithful. Your faith does not rely on your ability to suck it up and get through. Your ability relies on the fact that Jesus will hold you and carry you when you need him to. So don't throw away the sure thing. Don't throw away your confidence. Find your confidence in Jesus Christ, what he has done in the past, and what he promises to do with your future. And then he ends in verse 39. We are not of those who shrink back and are destroyed, but of those who have faith and preserve their soul. Isn't that good? This is a message from 2017. Tweaked a little. Here's some so whats I want to leave you with, church. Lean on others through the strain. If you're going through a tough time right now, it is not surprising. I have a hard time turning on the TV anymore. I mean, it's just like, okay, that's bad. It can't get worse. And it does. I love the fact that Hebrews 10 is followed by Hebrews 11. Do you know what Hebrews 11 is about? A whole lot of faithful people. Just a whole lot of faithful people. People who had hard times, Joseph and Abraham, Moses and David and the prophets, that some of them end up getting sawn in half for their faith. They had tough times. Hebrews 10 says, stick with it, be confident, look ahead, look to the past, don't forget to look up, stick with your faith. And then Hebrews 11 says, look, other people have gotten through this. Examples of those who have gone before us. And then do you know how Hebrews 12 begins? Here's how Hebrews 12 begins. Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily clings to us. Let us run with endurance. Do you ever feel like sin easily clings to you? Yeah. You're not alone. Lay aside every weight. Lay aside the sin which clings so easily to us, and let us run with what, church? Endurance. The race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith. Do you know who the cloud of witnesses is? These are our go-tos. These are the guys that we look back to and we say, they did it and I can do it too. Not because they were strong. Moses was like an angry individual. Striking rocks when he gets mad. And you remember Moses? Looking to God saying, why do you stick me with all these people? Let's get rid of these guys and start again. Moses was an angry person. And yet God uses Moses to rescue his people. You can read through Hebrews 11. Read David is an adulterer, and by the way, a murderer. Read through Hebrews 11, and then realize 12 starts with, look to these guys. Because in spite of their foibles, they had a faith that got them through. These are examples that remind us we can conquer anything with God's help. Beth and I went to do a wedding in Arizona. I saw one of the most amazing scenes I've seen. We went way up into this mountain, and there's just rocks everywhere. And there was this one rock, and we were close to it because we were actually going on a little path, and we looked at Beth pointed it out. We looked at this rock, and there is a plant growing in the middle of the rock. And I thought to myself, and there's no other plants around. I mean, it's like we're high up in the mountains. It's hot. It's not conducive for plant growth. But this plant is growing right out of the rock. There's no dirt in a rock. Do you know what happened? That plant began under the rock, found a crack in the rock, and grew through it, and only got stronger because the rock provided the strength. This is what we do for each other, church. We provide an atmosphere so that those around us, just like us, weak, frail, trying to get by, just trying to get doggone these snake paths. And we come alongside of them, we say, you can do it. I'm here, I'll go with you. God surrounds his people with these folks in their times of strain. God provided somebody for me I never knew he would 5 years ago in Michael. Michael's a pastor at Bartlett. He's the one that convinced me through his pestering to start Village Church East, and he has proven to be a wonderful rock for me so that I could grow. 5 years ago, we were in a tough place. You may not know this. We had just been through a very difficult hurt in our lives. And Michael came alongside and, like a shepherd that he is, cleaned up the fog, gave us an opportunity, and allowed us to be a part of what Bartlett was so passionate about. Since then, I've come across some elders in this church who have done the same for me. Brent, John, deacons, who I love hanging out with, heads screwed on very well, who are nothing but loving toward me and supportive toward my family. I've met some amazing MDs. Those are ministry directors, leadership, who God has provided along the way. Can I tell you how much I love people who start the conversation with, hey, Craig, how can I help? Like, that is a good rock, don't you think? Not, hey, Craig, there's 10 things you're doing wrong. I'll give you 3 to keep it short. But people who start a conversation with, how can I help you? And I'm surrounded with those people in my life. Few things in my life reach down into my soul as those words do. And I'm thankful for all of you. You've given me and my family affirmation this morning, and I want to give it right back because it takes a village. Village Church East, you get it? There's a little pun there. It's all of us serving together. It's all of us using our gifts together. And I'm grateful for all of you. And the second thing I want to tell you is this. Play the long game with your faith. Lean into each other and play the long game with your faith. That's what faith is meant for. Jesus reminds us that our faith in him is a strength that gets us through the tough times. He said, in this world you'll have tribulation, but take heart, I have overcome the world. Like, I'm not going to make it sound better than it is. Life is tough. It's going to be tough, but you'll get through it. Why? Because I've done it. Jesus says, and I'll walk with you through it. The goal is not to bicycle up to the snake path and turn back because it looks too difficult. The goal is to endure the hardship of the climb by leaning more into your faith, not leaving it at the bottom of the hill. You want me to finish the story? We get to the top of the hill, we see those mountains in the distance, and we are broken. We're thinking to ourselves, okay, now we're really messed up. We can coast all the way down and get a train across this godforsaken land, or we can continue bicycling through and figure something out tomorrow when we hit the next mountain. But before we do any of that, behind us there was a restaurant, and we were starving, and we were thirsty. And we, by the way, I told you we weren't talking to each other. So we saw this restaurant. We go over to the restaurant. We lock up our bicycles. We go into the restaurant. Chris says, my brother, says, you stay here with the stuff. I'm going to the bathroom. I said, do what you want. I don't care. So he goes to the bathroom. Remember, we're not friends at this point. So he goes to the bathroom, and then he comes back out, and he says, okay, your turn. I get, fine. So I go to the bathroom. I clean up, and I come back out. The problem was we didn't think ahead, and we had no cash. We only had a couple of cents, and we couldn't buy anything. Maybe some water, but that was it. I come out of the bathroom, and I sit there at the table, and we're thinking to ourselves, what are we going to do? There's no such thing as an ATM, all right? This was a long time ago. We're sitting at the, Chris is sitting at the table. I come back out, and in front of my brother is the biggest plate of spaghetti with meatballs and sauce on the top that I've ever seen. It was like, oh! I came back and I sat down and go, who did you kill to get this plate of spaghetti? Like, what did you do? And my brother says, I didn't do anything. He said, this guy came over while you were in the bathroom. This guy came over and he asked what we were doing, and he said, can I buy your dinner for you? And he bought us a spaghetti and he bought us some Cokes, and he's right over there. And I turn around and there's no one there. I think God has a sense of humor. Chris's calf is bleeding. We're still not friends. And we're sitting there eating the biggest plate of hot spaghetti, and it tasted like this is what heaven is going to be. Faith in Jesus is not meant to work in the ho-hum spaces of our lives. Church, faith in Jesus Christ is not meant to work in the ho-hum spaces of our lives. Faith is meant to kick into full gear in every event of our lives, especially when it gets hard. Faith is meant to show up big time. So I tell you, if you want to see a group of people convinced Christ can conquer every challenge they face, you should get to know Village Church East. If you want to be a part of a group of people who are compelled to see a falling apart world reconciled to the God who loves them, you should get to know us. We're here after 5 years because we believe some things. We believe that this life isn't all that there is. We believe God loves all people. We believe our time is short here. And we believe there are a lot of spaces God still has on his attendance list. We believe there's a part of a church that Jesus began that we have a small piece of that cannot be stopped by the gates of hell itself. We believe we can create a place where people are loved for, cared for, and be who God needs them to be tomorrow. We don't think we're better than anyone else. we definitely don't. We've simply been captured by the love of Jesus Christ. And we plan to continue to storm the fortresses of lies and evil in our world today with the love of Jesus Christ and the truth of God's word. And we're in this for the long haul. And if God allows us to remain, we'll still be here 5 years from now. And you are more than welcome to join us. God's still building his church, and I'm grateful he has given us a small part to play in his mission. Let's pray. Father God, I'm grateful for our time this morning. I'm grateful that you have allowed us to continue for 5 years. My goodness, the things that we've seen over the last 5 years. Could have never planned for, could have never thought about. The children that are here now. Corbin, who was barely rolling around in the nursery, now with 2 sisters. Families that are stronger. Husbands more devoted. Wives more gracious. You've given us the opportunity to reach into families and proclaim a faith in the gospel that is never changing, to people who just continually show that we're sinful from the crown of our heads to the sole of our foot. And we are amazed that you still want to use us. So God, I beg you, use us in 2022. If we stay at Fountain View, use us here. If you move us somewhere else, use us there. You call the shots. We just ask that you help us to remain faithful. And thank you for the wonderful example that you've given us and all the people who've gone before us. May we lean on you when the time gets tough, not abandon our faith, not give up the sure thing, but lean into it. And may you continue to build us into who you need us to be tomorrow so we can see you use us to do greater things than we have seen already. Thank you for Village Church East, and may your blessing lay upon us in the days to come. I pray in Jesus' name.